2/3 of this change.
Military
And also-
hardware, I see cruising around in Bastrop County, military style vehicles, machine gun mounts up there, there's no, they do. There's a lot of serious crazy people out there. Yeah, that's yeah, that's the same, I mean,
That's what
yeah.
I know you're going to give a presentation on that
Yeah.
sort of thing. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. Just like maybe.
I covered back when I was in Zodiac, I covered the whole Nixon and everything, and that was
This is about, my boss is
just a nightmare to keep up with. And, you know, if it hadn't been just for him having a smoke or trying to do have so much people, he probably would have made it to the next election. That was very unusual. The situation he got
all
himself
those folks on that list right there, they force you until they see it. I figured, you know, my boss was just real.
Best thing to do is keep doing grassroots rebuild and getting out there and finding all the people, just supporting them, keeping them in the loop, keeping them involved.
I wasn't too surprised. I sort of was expecting it from California.
He had a good,
I just thought there was a lot of
fundraising, great fundraising.
So
They seem to have a pretty
before
good
you
ground
let me
here.
write down my and that's another thing, I don't like to.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah, I mean,
They give you my card.
yeah, I think it's
Call me and whatever.
I got the draft. I used to work at this whatever. The person who's reviewing the draft,
Yeah, I think Biden's
the slowest.
Okay.
She's be my boss.
All
Alright, man.
It does seem to take a while to come out of the pipeline.
Use 18 months until the big problem.
I think so, yeah. School has always been starting on practice, so it's been years ago for it.
I'll shoot you an email when I'm ready for this. And first of all, I'd like to see
I understand
this
it.
or whatever. You can get it. It's like the California version.
Joseph Stalin marching down the halls of the White House. You know, once that word gets out, then, you know,
Right. And I'm also in contact with the senators and House members. That's some good.
he's gonna be communist.
Chow, Cal, I don't know. And some dude from Napa. So,
Yeah, sure. I do know a number of attorneys who are actually on this too. Yeah.
it's more fun.
Yeah.
And so what'll also end up happening is the same at the federal level. So it's important as the arts.
I think she's
Probably gonna coming down. When I was she's always been impressive.
I get in the front of the
Great, she went out and made them happen.
Yeah.
She wasn't one of those people that would promise.
And then you maybe
on
the
the move,
years.
didn't take a walk.
Alright, cool. Good to meet you. Nice to meet you, Ross. Tell Courtney hi.
I will. No, I like it.
Yeah, I was hopeful I made a good impression.
This has nothing to do with that, by the way.
Yeah, I know. When you first said that, I was like, what did I do?
I don't care. I'm glad you have to go.
Hey,
Yes.
I want to say something to you.
Okay, I'll
This goes-
Oh, thank you. Alright. Hey everybody, welcome to the monthly EFF Austin meetup. Newcomers and old timers alike. For those of you who don't know, my name is Kevin Welch. I am the current president of the board here at EFF Austin. This is, our speaker tonight is the current vice president of the board, Alex Sharastani.
Hello.
We also have board member and co-founder John Lipkowski here with us tonight. And we're happy for all of you coming out here tonight to hear about our game plan for the upcoming Texas legislative session. I have a few items of business I'm going to go over with you guys first. First of all, this Thursday evening from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at B.D. Riley's on 6th Street, just a few blocks from here. We're going to be having our annual December holiday party. We encourage you all to come out. We will have one free drink per guest, as well as a few free appetizers, and it'll be just a good chance for us all to hang out, have a good time, be nerdy and activisty, and plan for the coming year. So don't miss it. It's always a lot of fun with a lot of interesting people. Next, little order of business, which is we are going to continue next year to have our monthly meetups here at Capital Factory. Yearly, when we renew our contract, we have a brief period where we can choose to have the meetups be on a different day or time of the month. Now, my inclination is to keep it at the same date and time, but I do know there's a few people this date and time is problematic with. So the only other option they've given me would be second Tuesdays of the month from 7 to 9 p.m. Would that work drastically better for everyone in the room, or would that be drastically worse for everyone in the room? Any strong feelings one way or the other? Neutral feelings, I will just keep us at our current date because that's less confusing. I just know some people have asked me, could we move it in the
We have a
past?
conflict with some meetup, and I can't remember which one it is.
There is a conflict we have on Monday nights, but as I said, unless like everybody tells me, please, please, please move it, I'll probably keep it the same just for consistency. I just wanted to let everybody know we have a brief window to change it here, and then it's locked in for another year.
I will say that it does conflict with the DevOps meetup.
Okay, good to know.
I mean, this month they do their meetup with Cloud Austin, so.
True, though I would imagine there'll probably be different things we would conflict with on Tuesday nights, most likely. But yeah, I know John Van Loo has mentioned there is some meetup that is overlapping interest on Monday nights, on second Mondays, which is why I'm even asking the question.
Tuesday would work better for me.
Okay, all right.
Maybe we should do a 7 a.m. breakfast, like a metropolitan breakfast.
You'll never see me again.
All right, I'm hearing a few people one way, a few people the other way. I have to decide by this Friday. The odds are we are probably going to stay on second Mondays unless I get an enormous outpouring, but just wanted to raise that in case everybody's like, please change it, please, please. Let's see. As far as meetups for the coming year, we have a number of interesting things slotted up. We're going to at some point be hearing from Blue Action Democrats about some new legislative software they're working on. I don't know for sure when that's going to be. We were going to actually try to do it in January because it times very well with the legislature, but they can't do that.
Is that Jeremy?
Yeah, so we'll be doing it at some point, hopefully while session is still going on, but that's on the docket. We're also hopefully going to be currently for January, we're tentatively slated to finally do our sort of doxing 101 demonstration. So fingers crossed that will finally happen here. We also have a few other tentative things in the works. A guy who runs a website that releases videos uncovering wrongdoing in the Mormon Church has expressed a desire to talk about his work. So potentially interesting things in the coming year. We're always looking for people who might want to speak on stuff. If you'd like to talk about the current crash in the crypto markets, might be interesting. Want to talk about, you know, drones, and you know, we haven't had a drone talk in a long time. There's especially anything relevant to the legislature coming up that you feel would be relevant over the next several months. I'm always looking for speakers, so please get at me. Let's see, any final things I need to touch on? Oh, we finally have the ability to accept credit and debit card payments again. We finally have an iPad again after 3 years without one. So I'm going to start becoming very annoying as sort of a development director, where I'm going to, at events, ask you to please give us money, because parties and legislating are not free. It turns out people have to be paid. So if you're so inclined, come see me and I can take a donation from you, both here and after the meetup when we convene for drinks at Firehouse Hostel and Lounge. I'm trying to think if there's any other imminent things I need to touch on. Oh, we'll probably be doing something for South by Southwest. It's still up in the air. We're waiting to see what the powers that be at South by tell us. We're hopeful we may be able to get an official happy hour at the convention center, fingers crossed. So we'll keep you posted about
It
that.
wouldn't be at the convention center.
Oh, where would it be?
At some venue.
Some
Yeah,
venue.
They're making venue partnerships. I think.
Okay, so stay tuned. We're also in the earliest stages of coming in as a co-sponsor for next year's Act Lab conference, which will be in June. We are currently in the early stages of reaching out to potential sponsors and partnerships. If you know of anybody who might like to throw in on that, Act Lab is basically the former UT Austin brainchild of academic Sandy Stone. It should be a delightful intellectual time at the Vortex Theater this June.
And there's a call for papers at actlab2019.org.
Yes, and I think, was there anything else? There was one other thing I wanted to say. What was it?
You want to admire Alex's sweater.
It is
Oh,
pretty nice,
yes,
isn't it?
we're going to get to that. Actually, I guess,
The ugliest of sweaters. Yeah.
John, did I already say what you wanted to say, or do you still need to say something to everybody?
Briefly.
Okay, John, take it forward. What do you want to say? Here you go.
So I gave a talk at Nerd Night a couple of weeks ago about the history of EFF Austin, and it sort of brought it home to me kind of what we're really about, what we're trying to do, what our project is with EFF Austin. I've been doing this for a long time, and really for much of that time what we were doing was we were trying to make people smarter about, make policy people smarter about technology, make technology people smarter about policy. But I think right now what we need to be doing, and this resonates with what Alex is going to be talking about, is that we need to be making activists. We need to be making activists who understand technology. People who understand technology have, for some reason, kind of shied away from things like running for office and doing a lot of activism. I mean, I've got a long history of knowing a lot of people who were sort of tech or tech-oriented people who were also doing some kind of activism, and there weren't a lot of them. There haven't been a lot of them. So you're probably here because you have an interest in both technology and policy. And think about this. Think about how you can become more active. And my wife, who registered or got herself trained and licensed to be a VDR, to do voter registrations, wanted to make sure that I mentioned that they're going to have those classes again, I think starting in January. You'll be able to find out. But if nothing else, if you could just get your license to register people to vote, Texas is, I hear it's an odd state in that you have to have a license to do that. But if you can go out and register people to vote and just do that and be registering people who do understand technology, because I promise you, if you talk to legislators very much, you'll find out that they don't. They don't have a clue, which is one of the reasons why we're going to be doing what we're doing. So I'm just encouraging people to consider becoming activists at some level, whatever's most comfortable with you. But try to kind of get more into the frame of mind that just understand that policy people don't really get it. And you know, you probably don't know how the sausage is made. Alex is going to help with that, I think. So,
As much as possible.
that's yours. Okay.
Okay, and I have a couple final last little things I'm gonna turn it over to Alex. First of all, reminder, tomorrow is a runoff election. Vote in it, please. Your vote actually matters. They are predicting 3% turnout, so you actually might swing a race. So please vote in it. Second of all, wanted to just another thing we have coming up on the docket is I have recently secured us a booth at the upcoming Body Hacks 2019, which will be sometime in February. So if you're planning to attend that, come say hi to us. I also wanted to say that we're going to, as his time allows, David here is going to be doing some blogging for our website. So if there's any stuff in general that's in our purview, but especially if something with the upcoming legislative session involving the bills or some shenanigans behind the scenes comes to your attention, I recommend you contact David and he may be able to write an article about it. Without further ado, first of all, are there any final announcements from the community before I turn things over to Alex? Anything relevant to people you'd like to share? Nope. Okay, without further ado, because I've talked way too long, I'm going to turn things over to Alex with the question. Alex, what's up with that delightfully hideous sweater?
Okay, so I designed this ugly Christmas sweater. As you can see, it says F Politics at the top in green, and this is a lovely red QR code that goes straight to a donation page where you can support EFF. If you want one of these sweaters, you can purchase one through a link that's on the Facebook. I'm not sure it's on the website yet, but I'll give you a bit.ly link at the end of the presentation, and 10% of every sale goes towards EFF Austin. So let's get started with that. So as Kevin said, my name's Alex. I'm the VP of EFF Austin. I'm an attorney who graduated from the University of Texas School of Law. I have a background in computer science and philosophy. I've founded a startup that focuses on decreasing legal services costs. Hopefully that will make me money, though, we'll see. And then I also have served as the president of a nonprofit where I fundraised to support fellowships in nonprofits in the government sector. Over the course of a year, I was able to increase our funding by 50%, so I'm hoping to bring some of that expertise here. And then my legal experience has included Wikimedia, South by Southwest, and then the reason I'm here tonight is a couple of stints in Senator West's office. So let's do a quick overview of what we're going to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about how this whole legislative interest got started, what we were able to accomplish last session, what our goals are for this session in terms of strategic outcomes, policy areas of interest for EFF, and then finally, opportunities for involvement. At the very end, I'm going to have time for questions and comments and just general discussion, but that being said, if you have a question for clarification purposes or something, along the lines of what we're talking about, feel free to raise your hand.
Oh, and just on that note, everybody, I meant to say this, but in the interest of that, we have a diverse room, and we want to make sure when we have these conversations that we're hearing from everybody in the room. I respectfully ask that when you do ask your question, that you keep your question not too long, and that once you ask a question, you let some other people speak before you ask another question. So thank you.
Yeah, so last session. So what happened was, you all remember the presidential election and how electric the air got around politics. Whatever side of the aisle you were on, you had an interest in what was going on. And the board sort of got together and said, we need to capitalize on this. There have been all kinds of issues with cybersecurity that have been coming up, privacy issues. We felt the time was right to get involved. So without much warning at all, we sort of slapped together a legislative agenda. It was more reactionary than it was proactive by any means. But it was exciting to see that we actually had some success. So the first thing that we worked on was a ransomware bill. And this was actually out of Senator West's office. I was able to help draft that. What we ended up doing was we recognized that with the WannaCry ransomware attacks, there was a glaring hole in the system, and part of the problem is that a lot of these hackers, they don't care about the legal consequences. I mean, not in a meaningful way. They can do it as anonymously as possible. So what we wanted to do was just disincentivize certain types of attacks. So we approached it with a nuanced sort of view. We were able to draft it in a way where it mirrored the theft statutes, which basically means the punishment is related to how much damage you did in terms of dollars lost. But then what we did was we ratcheted up the penalty if you went after specific data. So medically protected data, attorney-client privileged data, and accounting data, because those are very sensitive. If you go after someone's attorney, you're going to know a lot about their life. So we were trying to really divert people away from that. Tim came in and he spoke before one of the committees to try and support our bill. And we actually got it to pass through the Senate before it died in the House. But the reason it died in the House was actually they picked it up word for word and slapped it onto HB 9. So EFF Austin had a hand in a law that's in effect, and it's a fairly progressive cybersecurity law. The second thing that we worked on was a cyberbullying bill. This was out of Senator Menendez's office, I believe. And what had happened with that was EFF National had flagged this bill as a problem bill. So you go to their website, you click on the link, and it just tells you everything that's wrong with this anti-cyberbullying bill, which is not very endearing to someone who's like trying to solve a real problem. And so we sort of recognized that this was like a good goal to have. You don't want cyberbullying. But so we approached the office and we said, hey, we've identified a couple of problems with your bill. One particular example is that it didn't take into account the intent of the person who's like sent a message over the internet. And we all know like sarcasm is so hard to capture in text format that people have started doing the /s thing just to be clear. And what we were worried about is, some kid who's got a certain kind of relationship with a friend saying something that looks bad to an objective observer, but really isn't, with negative intent. And they actually took a lot of our concerns into consideration, and they amended their bill drafts. Third, we were approached by a senator. BattleBots, anybody?
I watched way too much of this.
Yeah, it was a fantastic show. But yeah, so we got approached by a senator about a drone bill that she was having drafted. So she sort of reached out to us out of the blue, and we realized there must be a lack of knowledge at the Capitol if they reach out to us when we haven't reached out to anybody regarding anything legislative related. So there was sort of like a wide array of successes that we were able to have, both in proposing specific legislation, in amending currently existing bills, and then being approached by legislators in the Senate. So we decided that we wanted to have a more focused approach this time around. So me and a couple other board members have put a lot of effort into thinking about what do we want out of this session, how are we going to accomplish it, how are we going to fund it, that sort of thing. And one of our primary goals is become a trusted resource. So during my sessions with Senator West, something I was surprised to really learn was that going in and speaking with a staffer, with your representative, has a huge impact. They actually care what people have to say, and they actually welcome it. It's a valuable thing to have this data come into you instead of making you search for it when during any given session you might have 10,000 bills by the end of the session. So with that in mind, one of the things that we're planning on doing is just being available to people. So regardless if we like a bill or dislike a bill, we want to be available to help them draft the bill in a smart way. We want them to trust that we're gonna tell them the truth. I know when I was working, whenever people would come in, they're often working for an organization that has a dog in the fight, or they're paid for by a corporation, and they come in with something and they tell you about what a great idea it is. And it sounds great to you and you want to help them out. And then you ask them, but what does the opposition say? And you can't get a straight answer out of them. And it creates like a number of problems. First of all, it throws your antenna up. It says, I mean, there's got to be some argument against this. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a problem with pushing this bill through, especially when you tell me it's died a couple of times. So being available and being honest in that way, I think, opens the door a little bit more to having people communicate with us. And then, secondly, it could just be a time issue. So I might care a lot about your issue as a staffer, but if you come in and you can't help me out by telling me what the other side is going to say, that's extra work that I have to do, and it might fall to the bottom of my pile of things to do, as opposed to get the attention that it deserves. So by taking this approach, we hope to have a stronger intro with our legislators. Second is creating partnerships. So we want to have longevity with this. We want to set up processes that carry on for years to come, not just focus on the one session. So the partnerships in mind are working with other nonprofits, working with corporations that are somewhat aligned. And then our third thing is, as I said, developing processes. So I'm working on this part-time with some time donated, and it's really in order to be flexible and try and create these processes and test out what works and what doesn't work and have things set up for the next person who comes around who's working on this full time. So that's just like sort of a general overview of our strategic outcomes. And then in terms of topic areas that we're going to be focusing on, we're looking at cybersecurity, blockchain legislation, social media legislation, privacy, and net neutrality issues. And there's specific reasons for this. It's a very hot area to be interested in. We're sort of expecting a lot of legislators, whether they know about the tech or not, to be trying to put something out there to sort of signal that they're the one who understands. Maybe they actually do care about the issue, but maybe they lack a little bit of the nuance. But we wanted to be available specifically on these things as that informational resource. And then sort of as like a pie in the sky sort of goal for this session, we would like to have one bill go forward that we propose. So really this session is about making those relationships, as I said, being available as a resource, and sort of testing the waters with how we can do. And that area that we want to focus on is cybersecurity. There's a number of reasons for this. The Senate and the House both established interim cybersecurity committees, so the state has acknowledged that it's an issue that they want to focus on. Another is that the private industry is almost necessarily aligned with any legislation that goes through on cybersecurity. So unless you're on Australia or something like that where they weakened it, but pretty much anything that goes forward is going to be good for business for cybersecurity professionals, and so we want to establish those partnerships because it's low-hanging fruit. We'll be keeping track of bills. You don't really need to read any of this, but just sort of, this is the number of bills that I was able to identify based on some keywords in a search tool I built. There's only about 15 or 20 up there, but by the end of session, I'm sort of expecting that number to multiply by 10. I think there's been 1,000 bills filed so far or something like that. And as I said, by the end of session, there's probably going to be 10,000. So
Yeah, they're definitely filing them at a rapid clip at this point.
Yeah.
And Alice, was this table put together by Greer?
No, I built this. So this is a tool that I built as a plugin for Drive, and it just basically keeps track of bills as they come through based on a list of keywords that I put in. It lets me know how fast the bill is moving through session. So if the last action was like the day before, it'll tell you, hey, this is a fast moving bill. You need to get on it if you want to do something about it.
Could you share the plug-in with the EFF Austin Drive in general?
Yeah, sure. It's got a couple of bugs, but yeah, it'd be great to have other eyes on it.
To fix the bugs if you tell me what they are.
Yeah, for sure.
It's traditional to have bugs. It's traditional to have
Yeah,
bugs.
right. It's a real deal if it has bugs, for sure.
Oh, yeah, it has to have.
Yeah, and this one in red, it was a bill that was filed by Senator Nelson. It's one of the earlier ones, not the earliest, because Senator Zaffarini traditionally has the first, 20 or so bills. She has people stay over the weekend and line up to be able to be the first ones to file bills. But so 64 is actually one of the first few in. And this is significant because Nelson chairs the Senate Cybersecurity Committee, and she also chairs the Finance Committee. So she's in charge of the budget that goes towards supporting various bills. So that means there's probably a good amount of weight behind cybersecurity legislation passing, which is good news, and it'll probably be a priority bill for us. So with that, ways for you guys to get involved. I've identified a few different areas that would be really helpful to have people on board in whatever capacity most speaks to you. You know, we all have our own strengths and interests. And by all means, if you want to branch out into a new area, feel free and we'll get you plugged in. But so strategic planning, that's basically coming up with pathways forward in the big picture sort of sense. So identifying how to develop those relationships with senators and representatives, how to get corporations to sponsor some of our activities, that sort of thing, less going door to door. So yeah, helping develop processes and metrics. So Alex, who I think is here, yeah, there she is. Yeah, so Alex is going to be helping finding ways to identify things that we can try out, developing metrics where we can figure out what works and what doesn't work, and sort of rapid fire prototype various approaches so they'll be ready, or hopefully be successful this session, and if not, we'll have something on paper and easy to follow for next. Planning initiatives to raise awareness about EFF Austin. So again, those developing partnerships, it's more than just making the relationships with the senators and representatives. It's also establishing sort of a community in Austin where people can recognize, hey, I have a bill that I care about and there's an element of tech involved. I should go talk to EFF Austin, they'll help me figure out how to do that. So that sort of thing. Fundraising is going to be huge. The budget it would take to hire someone full-time is not minor. So if you have any ideas about fundraising, like this is a small one, you know, like you don't make a bunch of money off of selling a sweater, but every little bit helps. And so no idea is too small. If you have any ideas about that, that would be helpful. Outreach to legislators, as I said, like figuring out ways that to be more useful to them, to get them to want our help, that sort of thing. If you have any ideas about that, again, feel free to contact me. I'll throw my email up there at the end of the presentation. So there are some things that we're currently working on for strategic planning stuff. So in order to make partnerships with companies, one idea I had is a membership sort of system where we would provide these surveys that ask questions relevant to policy issues, and we'd get employees of these companies to be able to say what they think about various issues in the law. And what this would do is it allows the companies to show their employees that they care. It's like a thing that you can look at. For the employees, it sort of amplifies the tech community's voice, because you're able to walk into an office and say, hey, 70 people working at IBM support this net neutrality bill and 5 people oppose it. Like, we're not too focused on, like I said, the lobbying aspect for this session, but bringing that sort of information, I don't see it as lobbying. It's really just showing what the tech community thinks. And so that's one way to look at it. And then, we get that funding too, which is always key. And it's a valuable thing for the legislators. Again, when I was working at the Senate, we had data tables that we had to put together ourselves. We put together surveys ourselves, but it's hard to sort of sift through that. And so if someone's focusing in on a specific sector for specific issues, I think it would be more useful. Partnerships with nonprofits. So I think that would involve a lot of mixers and panels and that sort of thing, like doing Nerd Night or Homebrew 101, that sort of thing, just establishing ourselves in the community. There's another nonprofit thing that I have in mind, but we'll get to that later.
And I guess just springboarding on that, one thing that's quite helpful is that frequently orgs invite us to have a booth at their various conventions and whatnot. If you have free time and can man the booth for part of a weekend, that's incredibly helpful, because it's hard for me to block out 48 hours. So definitely something as simple as sitting there and telling people we exist. It's very helpful.
And then quickly to go back for that company thing, something that would be helpful is if you know a corporation that might be interested in something like that, if you have your own business and you think that'd be a useful thing, please let me know, pass along that we're looking to do this. That would be very helpful with the nonprofits as well. So in terms of the priority contacts with legislators, this is something that our clinical interns helped us with. So UT Law has sent us a couple of law students who have helped us out throughout the semester with doing some research. And one of the things I tasked them with was putting together a list of all the cybersecurity bills that went forward, putting together a list of all the reps and senators who were for and against the various legislation so we could get a sense for the lay of the land, and also putting together lists of nonprofits and lobbying organizations and such to see who's for and against these various bills, because those are going to be the natural allies as we go forward in the next session. So yeah, there's just like a chart like this, so you don't really need to read this. I can share this around at some point, but yeah, we have a good start going. Then another way to get involved, that's materials development. So legislative handouts. So handouts are important, I think, when you're going in to speak with a senator or a representative. It's helpful as like a touchstone of like, oh yeah, that person came in and this is the issue that they talked about. I think we face a unique problem with tech where it's like, it's very murky to a lot of people. And so you're trying to make it as simple as possible. And coupling that with this other phenomenon where people come in sometimes with these pamphlets that are a little bit too informative, and they just hand it to you and they say, thanks, see you later. And like, maybe I'll look at it, maybe I won't. And it's really dependent on time. So the priority is really having that face-to-face interaction and explaining the issue and being available to answer questions. One thing I'm trying to develop is these easy bite-sized pieces explaining tech. So this is just a mock-up example I came up with. What is blockchain? So it's a 2-sentence thing just explaining what the underlying technology is about without going too much into nuance, and just making ourselves available with contact information at the bottom. And then if they have the more nuanced questions, you can answer them and you can always get them the other materials later. But this is sort of a way to have an excuse to come back multiple times. So this one's blockchain. I would want to make one on cybersecurity, one on net neutrality, one on privacy, all of that.
I can send you a net neutrality one if you like.
That'd be awesome, yeah. So just having little simple things like this. So if you're so inclined, you can go into the Senate or to the House and be like, hey, I'm John with EFF Austin. Here's a little leaflet about what blockchain is, and I want to answer some questions about Bill X that's going through the Senate right now. This is a mock-up of that survey I was talking about. I remembered this being bigger, so you won't be able to read it. But basically just questions about what company you work for, a little bit of demographic information that's optional. You know, I don't want to force people to put down like where they work, and then also say that they hate the regulations that their company thrives under, you know.
And also, I want to say that any data you choose to give us, we absolutely believe in data transparency. So if you're curious how we're going to be using your data, we're happy to tell you.
Yeah, I'm like thinking about writing up a policy or something easy to understand, but basically we would take no advantage of it other than the explicit thing that we say we
And
want to
I
use it
think
for.
pretty explicitly, your data will stay with us. We won't give it to a third party without your consent or knowledge.
Yeah, totally. Except for, you know, the legislators.
So,
But yeah, so it just asks like up front, what political issue is most important to you? Then what political issue around tech is most important to you? Don't really want to lead them to an answer. And then finally, putting our own legislative agenda together and saying which of these is most important and least important. And then finally, just this is an example one, SB 64, which is Senator Nelson's bill. It would just be like, how positively or negatively do you view this bill, and put a little blurb about what's in there. This is to sort of give you an example, but this is what I mean by sort of amplifying the voice. So if we have a number of surveys answered and we have this information, we can go and take it to Senator Nelson and be like, most people love it, except for this little part right here, something like
and
that.
Alex, if you want, when you have these surveys, you know, ready for public dissemination, let me know. I can get a page on our website with them set up, so
Okay,
people
cool.
can go and answer these questions all in one easy place. So
Yeah.
get with me about that when you're ready.
Will do, yeah. And then, okay, this is the other nonprofit thing that I'm working on. I've worked on it a little bit with Josh Cohn, one of our other board members. But basically the idea is to put together a hackathon sometime in spring. The initial idea was South by, but I think it would just be white noise at that point. So we're probably gonna do it a little bit after South by. Maybe we can tie it into the Act Lab thing, I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll figure,
see potential.
we'll figure something out.
This South by is liable to
But
be a
there-
little
that's the
sleepier than our last
June.
couple.
Yes.
Would that be too late?
I don't. Well, so I don't think it's too late. It'd be too late to use the tool during session, but basically what the idea is to make a hackathon around government transparency. So Kevin actually works for the state doing some of their coding stuff.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, and he'll tell you some of the tools aren't robust enough, and so there's like an issue that I noticed, like senators' votes. You can't easily look that up. You have to go to the journal pages, and the journal pages, it's like a thick 1,000-page thing, and the PDFs are split up into like 1 or 2 pages at a time. So you got to like find the right PDF file to pull it open.
If you knew all the coding challenges of generating those 1,000-page PDF journals.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering why it sometimes seems hard for you, the public, to get the information you want, it's basically because we provide tools that we're legally required to as far as what the public is allowed to know, but you gotta remember that our primary clients are the lawyers and drafters and legislators. So what bandwidth we have, it's gonna be devoted to creating software that makes the lawyers' lives easier, not necessarily you as a citizen looking at the data.
Yeah, but all it does is provide an opportunity for us to do stuff. So putting together a hackathon, the general idea is to make more transparent how these votes are going down throughout the lifetime of a bill, that sort of thing. It doesn't need to be that specific, but it turns out hackathons are a hard thing to put together. So I went and I met with Open Austin and asked them for some advice, and they gave me a sheet that's sort of a work through thing of trying to figure out what we want to do. But it'd be great to have some of the membership take part in that discussion and try and figure out what shape the hackathon should take. I mean, these legislative efforts, it's not just the board's efforts. So if you want to have a hand in that, I would greatly welcome that. Yeah, okay, and then finally, there's gonna be the testifying on committees and walking around the Capitol in general. So Tim actually testified on committee. What did you think about it? Do you?
I thought actually it was entirely too brief and that I sort of froze,
Mm.
but I did actually say something. So
Yeah.
I did a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gives you a chance to go down to the Capitol, dress up, and talk to people that are voted into office by other people.
Mhm.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And especially I'll say that if you're somebody who has a job with non-traditional or flexible hours, that is definitely a way you can help us out, because most of the board has kind of 9 to 5-ish jobs, and we just can't go down during business hours and walk the beat the way some of you may be able to.
Mm. Yeah, but anyway, there's like a certain tone we're trying to go for again. We're trying to do the resource available thing, less so the lobbying for or against a specific bill. So when you go and you sign up to testify on committee, you can testify as for, against, or you can register as on. So the way that I'm probably going to do it when I go down there is just on the bill and just let them know what I think, let them know the community is available to them. Probably have some materials to hand out with like more information should they want it. But it's a great experience to be heard. There's going to be some pontificating in the chamber, but you get the discussion going and they take it seriously.
And just a couple other little things I just want to say real quick, which is also, if you're going to yourself, oh, I really want to help, but you know, I'm a busy person and I really feel I could barely have any time to help. Like, if you can help us for 5 minutes, that's better than not helping at all. So please, don't feel like, you know, that just because you can only help a tiny bit, it isn't appreciated. It's very much appreciated. And also, you know, knowing that we are a completely volunteer-driven organization, you know, the board themselves all have full-time jobs and busy lives. You know, things happen at EFF Austin because somebody makes them happen. So, you know, if you've been wanting to help and you've been being involved in something, you know, don't feel like just because one of the board took a little bit to get back to you that like we're not interested or don't want your help or we're not there. Just, you know, email us again. We may have gotten busy, but you know, be proactive in being involved and we'll be proactive with you. So, you know, just get involved. Don't make excuses.
Yeah, and then lastly, walking the Capitol. So that's going from member to member's office and just sort of giving them a lowdown on whatever issue you're talking about for the day. Talking to the staff is actually a really, as I said, good resource for the staff. Information sheets are nice. Sitting and talking with someone is nicer. If you don't know the answer to a question, it's perfectly okay to say, I don't know, and I'll get back to you later. It's better than trying to say something that turns out not to be accurate. Again, we want to build the trust that we're a good resource to have around. And then remember, most staffers are happy to talk. Usually if they're not able to talk, they're not brushing you off, there's a real reason. And if you're sat down with a staffer instead of your actual senator or representative, it's not anything personal, and the staffers actually have a lot to do with what bills get proposed and what gets voted in which way and that sort of thing. So don't take it as like a personal thing. And then we have a little bit of time, so I was going to ask, I'm going to go back to these ways to get involved. And if everyone, yeah.
I just wanted to mention one other thing. We had EFF Austin a few years ago formed a coalition called the Texas Electronic Privacy Coalition. Mm-hmm. And we created a bill, or actually other coalition members created a bill to require a warrant to get cell phone data. Mm-hmm. You know, that big issue, and I think a lot of people are familiar with that issue. We had broad support for the bill. It ended up having 100 legislators signing on as sponsors. Uh-huh. We did all of the work that you've talked about here, walking the halls. I mean, we really thought we had it cinched. Mm-hmm. It turns out that the key sponsor for the bill, the first guy who signed on, didn't get along with somebody on the calendars committee. So they never put the bill on the calendar. So despite all of the work that we did, nothing happened because of that, and we tried it again another session and the same thing happened. So, this is one other piece of this is that it's good to, well, strategic planning.
Mhm.
It's good to really do some careful strategic work and to really understand the people you're dealing with. And actually, it's kind of surprising that we had this issue because we had an experienced lobbyist working with us who kind of knew the people there. I think he had missed that conflict, you know. That was an unfortunate thing to miss.
Well, that's a perfect segue. So what I was gonna ask is, these are the 4 different general ways that we thought about volunteers being able to help out. And it looks like everyone could sort of pair up, but if you could turn to someone next to you or in front of you or behind you and come up with one way that you think you would want to help or something that you think would be useful for EFF Austin to do. I'll give you a couple of minutes and then we'll throw out the best ideas. Grab my notebook.
There you go. That was easy.
Sounds good. Good to meet you.
I have a couple of general questions. Well, one's a general question, one I want to talk to you about later.
Okay.
You know, we got really late, and I apologize.
That's okay.
Are these slides going to be available on the?
Yes, and then we live stream the whole thing too.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so Kevin will put that out at some point later on. I'll get you set up with the link so you'll be able to see it all. And then
The other thing, when you come up here, this is going on.
sure.
So I'm kind of new to Austin, but I'm obviously an AFF supporter.
Yeah.
And I would like to talk to somebody. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I'm
Okay.
there. Oh, by the way, I'm George.
Alex.
Alex.
Nice to meet you.
I have a friend in Buffalo who's an attorney, particularly a civil rights attorney. He was asking me advice about how to secure not only her communication, but sharing documents.
Right.
And like using something like Dropbox or Google Drive is going to do it. And I want to talk to somebody, and maybe, you know, maybe I just need an email to talk to somebody to be able to give her good
Yeah.
advice. And like, you know,
Yeah.
I have ideas, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not EFF.
I think I saw a presentation that was specifically about confidentiality of electronic communications, and it was for video chats and for sharing files and all that stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, there's the, you know, I know enough about it that there's both in-transit internet rest and
Yeah.
all that. You know.
Yeah, yeah. And, my email is going to be up on the last slide, and feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll try and track that down for you. If not, I can put you in touch with someone.
That's exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Cool. And then at the end, we'll have the general comments and questions thing. You might even throw it out to the group if you really want to.
Oh yeah, why not? Oh, this is kind of funny. I Sarah lost my phone.
Oh, what?
And it's really kind of funny. So I locked it, and I'm still trying to locate it. I did locate the power's dead, but I have a friend in town who's more like familiar with the area. He's actually a street musician who knows everyone.
Oh, cool.
He's gonna fucking find it.
That's awesome.
I think it's gonna happen tonight.
That's so cool.
What they're gonna do is also give them an idea about David George.
Any big ideas for us? Podcasting? Well, that's a good one.
That's something we do, so.
Yeah.
And I've got the freedom of work. You know, if something's happening, I can go.
That might be.
Spend a lot of time doing that.
That might be a good. That might be a good way to partner with the nonprofits and the corporations. So when we do those joint panels, we could also do joint podcasts, and it could be like the EFF Austin podcast, and just go and like
I'm
talk
not
to
territorial, so I'm happy sharing with, you know, anybody who's doing good stuff.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's a good one. I wrote it down.
bringing information to people.
I have your, yeah, we emailed.
Yeah, sure. Oh, cool. This might be a
And again, so I did say that there's some of that stuff. People who are educated, what's going on, some degree. Okay, so we're gonna say 100 people. Something of the offices.
Seems like such a lively discussion, I don't want to interrupt. Yeah, yeah. Let's give it another minute and we'll go over the ideas together.
It's actually been somewhere between 85 and 90. I remember like 89 or 90, somewhere in there, it was more Gilbert Stein. I remember it. You're in Spain, and I'm like, sure, let's go.
They're not gonna do it.
Oh, yeah. What happens back to
All right, let's start to loop back in. Maybe we can start over here and we can go around the room and just one or two of your favorite ideas. Hey, let's rope it back in, everyone, real quick. Almost at the end. John, Kevin. So we're gonna go around the room and just one or two of the ideas that you liked best, and maybe we start with Scoop. He had a good one, and we'll just circle around.
Basically, podcast. Since when does I do that? Podcast is a good way to get interest, and the more people you get involved in contributing to it, it doesn't have to be our podcast. I mean, I'm happy to share noise, sounds, and ideas with anybody that does podcasting.
Yeah.
That's the way you get your message around. Don't just do it on one channel. Have many channels out there. Letting people know what's going on, letting people know what EFF's doing.
I like it, and I like that it opens up the door to partnerships, potentially senators and representatives at some point, if they wanted to speak on the issues, or people who are running for office. Like, I really like that one. Back here, did you guys come up with any ideas? Nothing in particular?
Well, one thing that came up a little bit is that Owen here is quite knowledgeable about HIPAA legislation, and he was curious about exploring the way the Texas state level is handling the security of people's medical records. So Owen would be willing to volunteer his expertise potentially.
That'd be awesome.
There's some fruitful avenues there.
Okay.
More on the second part of that rather than the federal HIPAA part. But I'm eager to learn, and I know a little bit.
Yeah, that biometric stuff, Texas is one of the 4 states or something like that with a law that forbids holding on to biometric data that's algorithmically analyzed. So it's maybe a good state to be in for that.
Can I just add to that? I have a concern with it, and I haven't gotten into it, I'm trying to figure out. I mean, HIPAA laws are important as far as personal privacy, but attorney-client privilege as well. I'm actually kind of investigating for a friend of mine just moved from Buffalo, New York, and she's a civil rights attorney and wants to figure out how to secure her communication and data both in transit and at rest. I'm wondering, literally I'm trying to get advice on that to give her, but it's a similar thing.
We can talk about that.
What's that?
We can talk about that after.
Awesome, great.
All right. What about Tim and Maggie? Did you guys have any ideas?
Well, I think the tech community is starting to sort of wake up. And so I think a good time for outreach to the Austin tech companies is probably now. Google just had a bunch of walkouts over ethical issues. Mark Zuckerberg just got up in front of Congress and apologized. So for a lot of things. And so I think the community is waking up in a tech communities in general don't, I mean, they tend to be sort of apolitical, or they tended to be.
Mhm.
And so I think it's a wonderful time for outreach. The only question is, how do you get to them? I think the podcast idea is an excellent idea.
Mhm.
There have to be other avenues to do that.
We were also just mentioning, or we were discussing how, like, not just the tech community, in terms of who you're targeting, but also young people generally. So lots of organizations that are around already that are trying to get young people more politically involved. And a lot of young people are gonna care about the kinds of issues that EFF cares about. So maybe partnering with those kinds of organizations. I know there's like Rock the Vote. I don't know if there are any specific
Well,
Texas ones.
speaking of potential things in the pipeline for meetups next year, we were already thinking of exploring having a meetup, having Juanita from Austin Freenet come talk. Austin Freenet does a lot of outreach, educating youth on tech issues. They might be good to talk to about this issue. And as far as outreach to the tech community, John might have more knowledge about how we might make this happen, but maybe Josh Baer might be interested in an event here at Cat Factory.
man.
I know, maybe Josh
Former
would be
board
interested
member,
in an
too.
event where reps from companies here in town could come meet with us and talk
Why don't you
about
ask
this.
Josh to, be the speaker? of
I'd love
this
to,
meeting?
give me his email.
So another interesting thing that I saw at the Capitol, when we were there, was that the legislators seem to trust their staffers about tech issues based largely on age. So I'm sorry if I'm being ageist saying that, but that seemed to be what I observed.
Hmm.
And whether they actually knew anything about tech or not. And so I think that we have a wonderful pipeline into a lot of legislators just by talking to the staff, because
Mhm.
those guys are gonna get asked. Those young people are gonna be asked questions by, their legislators who are many times older and maybe don't perhaps know how to pair their phone with their car yet.
Yeah. And they're more often than not going to be the one you're speaking with in the first place,
That's correct.
which is
So we
an
have a
opportunity.
great pipeline.
Mhm.
Right,
That's
and if you ever doubt the need of that pipeline, I mean, there are real anecdotes that get passed around amongst state staff of like actual legislators asking questions on the scale of, how do I use the Google? Like, some of your lawmakers are that lacking knowledge about these issues.
Well, I also have the ability to bribe staffers with free coffee or greatly reduced discounted coffee. So being a Walker and making those connections, I think, is a really good way to get into some people in key committees.
Like the
do
way
it
you
strategically.
Bribing
so we
with
have so
coffee,
much
writing it down.
volunteer
By the way,
manpower.
since we're being recorded, I must say, no bribe was implied, but I don't.
We'll just put it this way, coffee is power.
Well, one thing that you can do is you can have like a legislative breakfast and invite, not necessarily the legislators, but their staff. Meet with their staff and educate their staff, because that's the pathway into the legislator's office.
And showing up in person, I'm not familiar with Texas politics, but,
Mhm.
I'm from Buffalo, New York, like I said. I used to regularly take lunch, on my lunch break, go and talk to my representatives, and that idea of taking the time and going in person, is important.
Mhm.
Like, it says that you're really, it's not sending an email. I mean, I think if you actually wrote a letter, that would be more important than an email, but showing
Mhm.
up in person is a powerful statement.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of states where you can't just do that. I mean,
Yeah.
here you can still go down there and
Yeah.
walk the halls and show up in their offices, and you might talk to the legislator, if not, you're gonna talk to their staff.
Yeah, I mean, phone calls definitely work too, but
Yeah.
it's basically, it's like a scale, right? The more personal you are, like the more likely they're gonna go to bat for you
Yeah.
with their
The
legislator.
harder you are to ignore, basically.
Yeah, yeah, but they care, like, they wanna sit down and hear it, like, they're not trying to avoid you, they wanna hear it. They're all there because they care. Yeah.
Have you ever used an actual lobbyist, if not to actually go walk the halls and burn the rubber, so to speak, but at
Mhm.
least to give you some strategic advice going in as to where the resources might best be?
We have people we can talk to about that, but we don't have a professional lobbyist working with us. It's gonna be me, trial by fire, but I have been on the other side of it, so I've got some connections to work with, but I think if you know of any lobbyists, it'd be great.
I don't, well, possibly, but
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it'd be very valuable, and it'd be very valuable, and that's also another reason to get involved with these nonprofit partnerships, because a lot of them do, and if they can get behind stuff that we're interested in, they can give us some pointers, even if they're not gonna do the walking for us, you know. Were there any other ideas that came out or anything? Yeah.
So we discussed making the concern for, you know, how your data is going to affect not just yourself, but other people, how these products that you're buying and these, you know, these tools, I like to call them, social media, anything that's a part of the Internet of Things. Basically, because the people in this room have I would say, an above average understanding of the importance of these issues. But, you know, the person that's, you know, just working their 9 to 5, trying to support their family, you know, they may not have the time or the resources to be able to invest in, you know, understanding and, you know, learning how to use social media more effectively as opposed to just being a advertising tool for someone else and in turn a consumer. So finding some way to, I guess, disseminate the importance and eradicate that apathy and help those people to learn how to use these tools more effectively, be more aware, and have the ability to be more researched and informed on what's going on.
Yeah, so like educating not just the legislators, but members of the actual community as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Specifically the financially disadvantaged, because I feel like, I mean, you know what I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah, they have more issues to deal with than thinking about their accounts.
Yeah.
How do you think you would target that population to be able to like best serve them specifically?
So
do you have thoughts?
actually, I'm sorry. There are several like state-sponsored computer centers that are around not just Austin but around Texas. I think that reaching out to the leaders in those centers and having people that are specialized in not just using social media but, you know, building databases and, you know, coding and whatnot, going to those centers and, you know, letting those community centers know, hey, you know, we can come in and teach whoever's here this thing, just get it out to the community, and that's how you kind of get that knowledge.
Yeah.
All kinds of knowledge.
We could even like develop PowerPoint presentations and send them to them with speaker notes, you know?
Precisely.
Yeah, I like that. So would you like to sign up to help do it? This sounds awesome. Yeah, okay, so real quick before we continue, if you're interested in volunteering, you go to bit.ly/EFFA sign up. And you'll be able to just put in your name, your contact info, and how you want to help.
If you don't think you'll remember that, take a picture of it with your phone, or do it now. And also for any of you who, you know, we have websites, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Meetup. But for any of you who are like, oh, how do I get in touch with them after this meetup? Get with me. I have a business card. So
can you guys all read this? Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So if you go to this donate link, you can do recurring donations that specifically fund the legislative efforts. Kevin has a link for like general fundraising if you'd like that. This is my email, this is my Twitter, this is my website. If you're interested in the sweater, you can go here. Just in case people need to get out of here by 8 o'clock. But I would love to continue this conversation. I think you had something that you wanted to add?
While we're on that topic real quick, I'll just say, yeah, there's multiple ways you can get involved if, you know, you can help financially. We have a direct PayPal link on our website. You just want to give us money, I can take your card here with our Square account. We also have an online store courtesy of Bumper Active that is a link on our website on the top menu. If you go there, you can buy bumper stickers, t-shirts, coffee mugs, etc. All of these proceeds all help us, or get Alex's sweater, limited time.
Yeah,
it makes a great gift.
And it's
so
the QR code.
What do I get that cousin?
QR code goes to donation page too. So if anyone's curious around you, they're going to get there.
And you know, the National EFF has an awesome hoodie. It glows in the dark.
we can do that.
Yes, and I must add, you know, yes, we want your money, but you know, if you are limited, you always give to EFF because they're doing real valuable.
They are fighting
have a full-time staff.
You know, some
they
of the
fight the
people in
fight.
EFF
So
go in the dark.
don't give to both of us if you can, but definitely make sure you give to National too because they're fighting for your rights in Congress.
And so you had something that you wanted to add.
I probably look like a hippie standard from long ago. My name is David Quick. I'm an artist in the community. If anybody's been downtown, you guys might have seen me.
I am at the corner of Estes Follies every single day. The arch is about this far away, the police station is this far away, and one of the things that I don't think that anybody is dealing with is when the addiction happens. It is a corporate entity making a database that the structure was initially built for, okay, to sell. How they get people to buy is they give them things. All the programs having to do with what phones that people get in the lower class communities. These are government programs mostly, but these are corporations. These people get the contracts. They're taking the information that these people who need these social media platforms from their cell phones and all the wonderful gifts that they're getting. They don't understand that the gifts that they're getting is an entranceway into getting their information. So what I found was, as an artist in the community, if you guys don't mind, is that when I wore a t-shirt that said, all your data is being observed, I found out how many people in the community knew, around an area of the lower class, what that meant, and said, that's great, free. Now, everybody has agendas having to do with how we're gonna get to it to the floor of Congress, how we're gonna make sure that these bills get through. Politics suck. But the real people need to be addressed in some respect, having to do with the people who don't know anything.
Right on.
People who don't know anything at all, and they are being given to an addiction to giving their information that they don't understand. Everybody's talking about a presentation, but if you take a pamphlet, you walk around to the poorest people who need these things, who need tech in order to live in this society, they do not understand yet that this is selling information off to entities. They don't understand that, and all it would take would be a pamphlet.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
That's good.
I was just going to ask if there was any kind of already existing media literacy curriculum that we could push as something that could be disseminated and better funded through our state legislature, through the state school board, things that are really becoming, fake news is becoming absolutely endemic. There are lots of problems that could come down to just a simple fact check, and people don't know where these tools are and how to use them. And it's not just good for, the discourse, it's good for civics, it's good for this moment we are at in our crossroads of history, and it's something that definitely needs to be promoted more than it is, if it is at all.
If you put a t-shirt that says EFF on every single homeless person that's here, give them clothes to wear.
He is not wrong at
I
all.
like that.
And I will say I know anecdotally that at least at the middle school level, some students are getting educated that fake news is a thing, but I think it really depends on the quality of the school and the teacher. There are certainly not universal standards in the curriculum, and that absolutely is something that I think if there's any opportunity to push that in the legislature needs to be done.
There's also, we don't really have to wait for the legislators to be like, yes, this is okay. We could actually put together that curriculum and just take it to the school and just be like, hey, we'd love to give this presentation.
Well, this is definitely something I think we would want to rope somebody like Freenet into this conversation, because they already have some of this infrastructure in place, and if we can provide them the expertise, we might be able to make some
communities and schools is nearby too.
But what about taking it to the streets?
I like that.
Well,
That
that's the
too,
thing.
I'm all
Okay,
of it.
Our people
Yeah.
are Americans. We're Americans. We might come from other places and our families come from other places, but they don't understand that when they're using that new phone that they get from that government program,
It's a two-way
that
street.
they're going to their cousin, their mother, that's what they're emailing, and then they get ties having to do with the information that we all have. Now, if they understood that, they would first be educated in tech, which would increase our community's knowledge and information on a whole. These are our brothers and sisters. And on top of it, profiteering could not occur. Profiteering could not occur if education was the point, instead of when am I going to be imprisoned? On the other side, these people are fighting for their lives. They get jaded, they do their things, everybody's tired of spare strangers on 6th Street. If you gave them something to do in order to help the community in any way, shape, and form, you would be surprised as to how many people would dig it.
That's true.
And then we would all be able to talk. We've got isolation happening, and we think that we're different, and we're not. But the people who are the poorest are the people who, well, everybody's going through hard times here, I'm sure, right? So these people are in desperation. They will take anything, and then they don't understand what it is that they're giving. If you made them understand what it is, then it would help everybody. And nobody could deny, because, well, it's a big poster, because you can't help but look at it. If you put the right picture to that, then we might be able to do something. Just saying.
Well, I want to say I really do appreciate your point that I find in the tech community at large, but also in the tech activism community, there's a tendency because we tend to come from certain demographics that are better off than other demographics. We can, despite all our best desires to make the world a better place, we can be insular in our perspective. And so I really appreciate your point that there are people not in this room, not involved in this conversation, and we do need to hear their voices. So, I'd be happy to give you my business card. We can talk more because I really appreciate your point.
I was wondering, and I apologize if I'm duplicating anything that was presented earlier,
Sure.
but one angle that I think needs to be approached in this whole, our privacy and our data is holding corporate entities who sell us products, holding their feet to the fire when there's a data breach. I mean, right now they get sued a little bit, but just, I think Bruce Schneier has mentioned it a lot, like the idea that these companies are like free to put out insecure products. I mean, I realize there are some companies that are, like Google sells their data, that's their business model, but there are, the whole IoT space is crazy insecure.
Yeah.
And it's, it's big because people buy, products.
It's convenient.
It isn't even a computer, and they just wanna plug it in and it works like their car works.
There was a data breach of a data aggregator, and it's like 380 million records or something.
And then
different records,
yeah, and then
400 variables each,
Yeah.
it's that kind of stuff.
And putting out, like, I'm an embedded software designer in the embedded space, and security has to be an issue. And the idea that, obviously if there's not any sort of legislation about it, a company is not going to do that because it costs money and it delays their product release.
Well, it's actually a similar problem we see to problems with green tech and global warming, where currently software companies treat data privacy and security as an externality, and they push the societal costs on those.
Exactly.
They're
Yeah.
not liable for the damage.
That's
they do.
part of the reason that the partnership with the cybersecurity firms is really the priority, is because for them it's a good thing for business, and it's business fighting business plus what the community wants.
Well, it's one
It
of
might
those
even it out a
ironic
little
things where
bit.
much like green tech actually creates jobs and doesn't destroy jobs, cybersecurity creates jobs, it does not destroy jobs.
But this is the kind of thing that perhaps needs to be done through legislation from the standpoint of, a company, I mean, like you said, the green techs create jobs, like wind at this point, it's cheaper, I just read recently that it's cheaper to build a wind farm than to maintain a coal plant. So there's economic incentive.
Except for the subsidies coal is now getting.
Right, but, just that as an example.
Right.
There isn't that incentive in at least the IoT space, so, sometimes you can create incentives, or incentives happen economically, but when they don't, that's where government needs to do something.
Agreed. Of course, this is also a good example of where you do need experts to soberly create said laws, like, to look at, say, Europe's GDPR is a good example. The intentions of that law were very noble, but I did hear through the grapevine a number of people pointing out that the way that law was implemented for really small-time website operators who did not have huge budgets, the law did not have any mechanisms in place that they could get assistance or funding to help secure their data. So small businesses were left footing a huge bill, so that had not been thought through in the legislation.
I think we had someone in the back, right here, and then right here.
Okay, sorry.
I started saying something that Kevin sort of spoke up on, but as a liberal, I tend to look at the benefits of regulations, but I think it's gonna be important, even with cybersecurity, to understand what the costs are, as much as you think all our partners are gonna be in favor of it.
Yeah.
Our for-profit partners are gonna be in favor of it. So I do think if there's a resource that we can turn to that would help us with that, it would make any presentation we have stronger.
Yeah, I think the FTC approach to cybersecurity is a pretty solid one. It seems like you're familiar with it, but for those of you who aren't, it's an unfair or deceptive trade practices thing. So basically, the question is, if a person uses your product, would they assume that there's a certain level of cybersecurity? And what that ends up doing is it creates this threshold. So if you're a mom and pop pizza joint, you're not held to the same cybersecurity standards as a Google or a Facebook or like a chain of pizza stores. You're treated as a member of your industry. And so the level of regulation is much lower. It's like, do you have a good password versus like, do you have Cloudflare set up? And then if you're a larger company, the state of the industry is what the standard is that you're shooting for. So it's a way to sort of mitigate the problems that come with it. Because it's true, if someone's a startup, they don't have the money to go and implement all kinds of cybersecurity.
I mean, you know, I think actually a lot of the recent laws we've been seeing out of Europe are a good example of these good intentions but not thinking it through, where all these Article 11 and Article 13s, they actually, only companies on the scale of Google have the money to implement these regulations. So they actually increase monopolistic tendencies, these laws actually. So you have, that's why you need orgs like EFF, because you have to think through these consequences.
Alex?
I think that what Quick brought up was a very important point, and I think that to an extent that lack of options or alternatives to a system which is fundamentally exploitative is something we're all subject to. And I think that what might be valuable, I don't know the extent to which, you know, sort of like the values of EFF have been codified, but in the nonprofit world, there's like such thing as B Corp, where, you know, you have like a system to say like, these are things that we know are within, you know, the values of, you know, respect for individual privacy and so forth. And so if you're tired of the Facebooks or whatever, you can go to these services and they're you know, they exist. And I think that might be a way to make partnerships valuable to corporations and our startups, nonprofits in the future, that type of certification.
Absolutely, and just because this is a good segue for those who may not be aware or do not know, EFF Austin actually does have a mission statement. It's brief, I will read it to you. EFF Austin advocates the establishment and protection of digital rights and defense of the wealth of digital information, innovation, and technology. We promote the right of all citizens to communicate and share information without unreasonable constraint. We also advocate the fundamental right to explore, tinker, create, and innovate along the frontier of emerging technologies.
And then you had another comment?
Well, one of the things that's important is that, that people are forced into these situations. Our corporations have now taken over control of the government, basically with the conglomerate, Google, Fox, putting it together, fake news, etc. We are being forced into buying situations, buying things. The only power that we have is not to buy in this situation. If you taught people that Rosa Parks, the idea still exists, that if you don't buy, you make a statement, then you end up making way for people to be free. Freedom of information is important. They don't understand that this is important because they don't understand that in a way. Their personal information is sort of like electronically selling your soul. They know how to hit you, they know what to do, they know your mother, they know your cousin, and when these things happen, you don't think that you have any choice. Now that has to change. If we educated the people on where to go, what sites to use, instead of these sites, these are for the people who are the salt of the earth. They're going to catch a job, they're going to go ahead and do it, they're going to bring themselves up, and these are the people that we're depending upon. These are your mothers and your fathers who worked really hard, maybe, and hopefully. So in that sense, if you show them where to go with the information that they have, it is canceling that out. If you take it so that the first thing that's advertised to them, Google, is not what they're supporting, okay, on a whole, show them where to go. Then that will make a huge difference on how the entire structure sits. Why do they sell to these people? Because that's what's happening. It's not free. Somebody's making money off of it when they give these phones to the people, or computers or laptops or any tech. So you have to look at where it goes and inform them of it first, right along with it. Okay?
One of my favorite websites to share with people is haveibeenpwned.com. Is everyone familiar with that?
Is it?
Yes.
Have I Been Pwned? It's P-W-N-E-D. Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic website.
Part of this room has been
Yeah. Thanks, Experian. Or is it Equifax?
And and also just say, once again, I appreciate the point. If any of you doubt the power of getting a critical mass of people to understand these issues and demanding their rights and demanding change, literally just today, French President Macron just announced he will be raising the minimum wage in France immediately. So demanding change does work. You just have to seize it.
These are also voters in the lower class community.
You had a comment?
So one thing I'm noticing is kind of a common thread from the last 5 or 6 comments is, interestingly, loot boxes, which is something that is, to my knowledge, has not been really well regulated. And I'm not sure if it would fall under federal or state gaming statutes, but it's
Europe regulated it as gambling.
Yeah,
The Dutch
it's a
straight up
gaming
said it's
system.
gambling.
Hawaii,
It is, and I
Hawaii,
think there needs to
Hawaii
be
did
more
it
of an
too,
awareness
so
of
states
that.
can do it. States can do it too.
Yeah, and I mean, a good point, that's another issue that actually touches children a great deal, because essentially kids are being taught to be gambling addicts at a young age in their video games, absolutely.
Anyone else? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up then. Contact information on the board, donation link on the board. This is for signing up for volunteering, and yeah, my various website stuff. Oh yeah, if you want an ugly sweater and want to join me at the holiday party and rocking this thing.
And for just, if you're closing, we're all going to, those of us who have time, we're gonna be adjourning to Firehouse Hostel Lounge, which is about a block from here, for drinks and chatting and camaraderie. So I hope you can join us.
And find your way in.
Yes, secret bookcase. I want to thank our Vice President Alex so much for a wonderful presentation, and I hope you all.
Yeah, David, right? Yeah. Nice to meet you too. I owe you an email.
No, it's okay. I've been super. I'm writing a book, so I'm like all over the place myself. So, but the future. So you guys are drafting bills, right?
A little bit, but mostly what we're going to be doing is identifying the bills that are coming through and helping them draft the bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to write a series of voluntary that would focus on individuals, businesses, organizations,
yeah.
kind of get their voices
That's awesome. No, I get what you're saying. I think it's the right move. I like the sound of it. So Scoop, standing next to John right here, he's interested in doing podcasts too. And we talked about maybe going to like people who have something to say. Like it'd be interesting to do like a team up thing, or I don't know what you're interested in that. And you're welcome to do whatever you want.